Mark, who's also on Skype. Hey, Mark from EasyDNS. Welcome to Free Talk Live.
Hey, Stephanie. Hey, Brian. Hey, Mark. How's it going?
Good.
Great.
Hey, Mark. Great to hear from you.
Yeah, nice to be. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, of course. Now, EasyDNS, your company, you're the CEO of EasyDNS, right?
Yep.
Okay, and EasyDNS is a sponsor of Free Talk Live, and they do you guys do domain names, web hosting, managed WordPress hosting, and a bunch of other things related to sort of website services. So you had actually dropped us an email and said that you wanted to call in about the certain issue that I think you're about to bring up. Why don't you explain what's been going on?
Okay, sure. I mean, I just think it's pretty topical for the show. So we've always sort of taken pride in being the freedom of speech domain registrar and the domain registrar that sort of stands up for our registrants' rights. And one of those positions is we used to say we wouldn't take down a domain name without a court order, unless it was a clear case of network abuse, spam, botnets, malware, that kind of thing. Those kinds of things, we felt justified in doing summary takedowns, but we said beyond that, if you want us to take down a domain that we're not already inclined to take down, you had to go get a court order. And we actually...
just a point of clarification here. If you're not familiar with how website domain names work, a domain name is basically a human memorable and human readable thing that you can type into your little URL box and go to a website. But really what a domain name is more like I guess the DNS system you could say is like a telephone book for the internet, right? That's how Ian likes to explain it. It basically just tells your computer where to go, head to this page, right? HTTP.
I mean, we call it the dial tone of the internet. So
yeah.
My 30-second spiel on DNS has always been, before you can send an email, hit a web page, get an instant message, download a file. Before any of that happens, a couple of computers have to have a really fast conversation that takes a few milliseconds, and that's called a DNS lookup. And without those DNS lookups, you disappear off the internet. Just nothing happens.
So you are actually, or companies like EasyDNS are actually the ones who are responsible for taking down domain names that maybe a court would order it taken down. So like, something that was, I don't know, doing something criminal or not criminal, maybe just infringing on so-called intellectual property or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of reasons why, they go to either the domain registrar, which are the guys that sort of keep your domain name registered in the registry. They can take it out of the registry.
Mm-hmm.
And then the DNS provider is actually running the name servers that are answering questions about your domain. And then you can go to the DNS provider and say, stop answering questions for these domains. And, a company like ours, we're both. And a lot of companies are both. Some are one and just the other. So, but that's, it's not just copyright takedowns. There's, WikiLeaks was a famous one that was pressured to be taken down by the State Department back in 2010.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Pirate Bay commonly gets taken down all over the world.
About once a month, yeah.
Yeah.
Who was actually responsible for, who was WikiLeaks' domain registered through? Do you know about that?
Oh, that was a huge thing because it was registered with another company called EasyDNS at the time, and they took down WikiLeaks DNS entries, and someone somewhere made a typo and said EasyDNS killed WikiLeaks.
Oh.
And it just unleashed a gigantic backlash on the internet.
Ouch. And that's crazy because you guys are really liberty oriented. I mean, you really are.
Yeah, we are. And actually, that was the event that kind of polarized us into that sort of stance, because what ended up happening at that whole WikiLeaks thing got us sucked in. And then some people came to us and said, well, what if we're going to bring WikiLeaks to your system? Will you take them on? And we said, well, yeah, of course we'll bring them on. And so the .org never made it on because it got caught up in limbo. But for a while there, at the end of that whole episode, the whole crescendo was then their backup site, wikileaks.ch and wikileaks.nl, ended up coming onto our name servers during that whole fiasco.
Tremendous.
Thanks for that.
It was just, it it was just a crazy episode in history. But you know, so that was one of the more famous ones. There was a case a few months ago where a domain registrar took down a Mexican sort of anti-government, like whistleblower site because
that's disturbing.
Asked them to. Yeah, it was like purely politically
What's
motivated.
your question, Mark?
Well, okay, so we had an episode this week where we took down a domain without a court order, and it wasn't a network abuse thing.
You tyrant!
Yeah, I know. So that's what we wanted to put it out there for the question. It was an online pharmacy, and the FDA complained to ICANN.
And now you guys are based out of Canada, right?
We are, yeah.
Okay.
We're in Toronto, but ICANN is it's a U.S. corporation, but they're supposed to be international. They're based in the U.S. and they accredit all the registrars. And then VeriSign runs the actual .com registry, which is a U.S. entity. But so the FDA went to ICANN and said somebody ordered a controlled substance over the internet from a website that was registered through EasyDNS and on EasyDNS name servers. And unfortunately, that person died.
Oh.
And, the special agent from the FDA, said, I have personally investigated this claim. I find it to be credible. I want to ask that I can do something about it. I would like this website to be taken offline. It took us several weeks to find out about this through kind of a various comedy of errors. But when we finally found out about it, we got on the phone to ICANN compliance. We got on the phone they were pretty ambivalent about the whole thing. We got on the phone to the FDA special agent.
He wasn't ambivalent.
No, he was actually a really nice guy. I mean, and he's read my blog. He goes, I know you're like this libertarian, anti-government guy, freedom of speech. I get that. I'm asking for your help here. Somebody died, and we want this site taken offline. And we did it. The next day, we unplugged the site, and we modified our terms of service to say that if you're operating an online pharmacy, you have to be able to produce a valid pharmacy license for every country you're shipping into in order to use our service.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to say I can really see why, if I were in your position, I think I would feel really uncomfortable about hosting or supporting you weren't hosting the website, I guess, but about registering this domain name that is associated with a pharmacy that's killing people, of course. But doesn't this decision kind of turn you into an agent of the FDA? Like, you're kind of policing now online pharmacies that want to register domains through EasyDNS, or are you basically just trying to make it onerous to do so that you don't get any customers who are online pharmacies because you don't want to deal with it?
It's probably a bit of all of the above. I mean, because the backdrop of all this was, we were sort of having a friendly debate with a private company called two private entities that were trying to get registrars to take down quote unquote rogue pharmacy domains, right? LegitScript and NAPV have been sort of pressuring registrars for a long time, saying you've got to take down rogue pharmacies, and here's a list of pharmacies.
Yeah, Mark, we're short on time. Hold the line if you've got more. I kind of want to talk about this a little bit more. This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE. Do you agree with EasyDNS takedown of this online pharmacy? Call in, 855-450-FREE. We were talking with Mark. He's the CEO of EasyDNS, a domain name registrar, and they recently took down the domain of an online pharmacy website without a court order, which was contrary to their previous policy. But they did it because this pharmacy apparently sold a bad drug to someone that killed them. And now they've changed their policy, and they got a call from the FDA, who was kind of breathing down their neck. Now, Mark, what I'm curious about is, have you received any basically criticism for this? Like, have the the libertarians, free speech people kind of gotten on your case about it?
Not so much. There was one negative comment left on the blog post when we blogged about it on Friday. Someone said, your free speech posturing kind of loses its luster if you change your policy retroactively. I'm not, I can understand that comment.
Yeah, I think there would be a lot of liberty-minded people that would say, oh, well, these like pharmacies would have to be licensed. And I think a lot of people, guys like Stossel will do specials about this sort of thing where, the licensing thing is ridiculous and it's anti-freedom and all that.
Pharmaceutical drugs kill people left and right, even when they're from licensed vendors. And so, where's the safety aspect here, really?
Right. But I mean, if you got a criticism like that, Mark, I mean, what would you say to them?
Well, what we did say to that person is, it's one thing when a private company asks us to take down domain names for nebulous, unspecified reasons, okay? Like legit script or NAPB. It's something else when the FDA, who has the power to criminally indict us, asks us to take down a website because someone died from using their product. Yes, they can, and they will get a court order. They're asking us to do it before they get a court order because they feel that time is of the essence. Now, we feel that those situations are a little different in, you have to make a judgment call somewhere between those lines, and that's what we decided to do, considering that this was, not a private entity, an extra or quasi non-government agency telling us to do something, which we always dig in our heels and resist against, or, sort of push back against, but a government agency, with a credible...
I'm sure it's scary to have these government agencies who are wielding tremendous amounts of power on your case. I mean, I imagine...
It's your business, and you got to do what you've got to do to sort of preserve the business.
Yeah, there's risk assessment. If I was running this business, I'm going to say, is this worth the risk to me? And it's my business, my shot to call. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't like the risk, I don't do it. And there is nothing wrong with that.
And that's one of the points that we made, that it's perfectly, within free market ideals for a private company to say, this is our risk rewards, scenario on this situation. Do we want to be criminally indicted or barred from traveling to the U.S. ever again? Or,
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is your company, and you're a private company, and you can choose which clients you want to work with. I wholeheartedly agree with that. That's a fundamental right that you have. I mean, I do kind of worry that it could become a slippery slope, but then again, it really you're the boss essentially.
It's absolutely a slippery slope. I mean, we've commented on that. I said I'm in the market for a good pair of soccer cleats now because it was funny because the same day that this happened, we got a request from the Mumbai Police Department about something else. We got a request from the England Cricket Association, and we even got a request from the City of London, England intellectual property crime unit, who we've been having an ongoing battle with for months, just sending us a notice of criminality. Just that's all it. This is a notice of criminality of one of your domains, and you should reevaluate your relationship.
So you've been dealing with this on a consistent basis, and
yeah. I mean, and in those cases, we reply back. We say, to the IPCU, it's like, okay, we are eagerly awaiting the outcome of an actual legal process. We're happy to comply with any warrant, subpoena, court order, anything like that. But, what's a notice of criminality? It's nothing. It's
I imagine some people may be attracted to a company like EasyDNS to register their domains. If you're kind of promoting yourselves on free speech grounds, you may attract some unsavory clients or undesirable clients that you may have to just draw boundaries with and say, look, we don't want your business, it's too much of a risk to us. But Mark, we've got actually a call on the line from a former narcotics officer who has some questions for you. If you want to talk to him, I'll bring him on the air.
Sure, yeah, bring him on.
All right, let's bring on Tom in Maryland. And hopefully this works out because Tom is on the phone lines and Mark is on Skype. Tom, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Thank you for taking my call. I'll ask my questions quickly, and then I'll leave with a comment.
Sure.
I want to ask the gentleman, what documents in support of the agent's claim did he request, if any? Secondly, what did he do if the documents were produced to screen their veracity? Number three, what statistical research, if any, did he or his company do to determine the true danger of online pharmacies in relation to other businesses and the products that they sell online? And my comment is simply this. if your answer to the above is no to the questions that I just asked you, I'd urge you to rethink your appropriateness in making business decisions and policy changes, because otherwise you're making those decisions, those major decisions that cost you money, I'm sure, based not in fact, but in emotion.
Tom, yeah, thank you for your comment. I'll let Mark respond. Mark, were you able to hear the questions?
Yeah, I got all of them.
And thanks, Tom, for the call.
To the first point, we did not force them to get a court order.
Yep, 30 seconds, by the way.
Okay, so we didn't get them to get a court order. They, in as many words, they were saying, we're asking for your help. Yes, we can get a court order, but we really want this site down sooner than later. Mm-hmm. 2, we did look into that this person was really an FDA agent.
You did some research, yeah.
We know that he is. He's actually quite well known.
Mark, we're out of time. Thank you for calling in tonight. We just had a really interesting call with Mark from EasyDNS about the domain name takedown, and he got some. He got his feet held to the fire by the caller Tom, who was questioning him about. Really, did he verify these claims by this FDA agent?
I really appreciate a CEO coming out in front of a situation like that.
Yeah, that's
there's
good
a lot
PR.
to be said for that.
I think he's in a difficult situation. I really can relate to him. Because sometimes you do just get these undesirable clients that you don't want to work with, that are just too risky and too costly. And I mean, I can really find a lot of sympathy in the argument that at the end of the day, it's his private business and he can choose who he wants to work with. He doesn't necessarily need their $10 a year, right?
And Brian was pointing out the risk assessment aspect. Look, there are rules that the FDA lays out of sort of you're not allowed to use language that might be considered offensive in the community. Now, they're not clear what offensive is, and they're not clear what community they're talking about. But what we found is that if there's a complaint and for whatever reason they decide that it's worth the trouble to go and find somebody, that they can do that. But the general rule is there's the 7 dirty words, right? And then one of those dirty words is just a repeat of the word. And then another one has been used pretty regularly. So you're now down to like 5 or something like that. What I understand, there's like 4 that you can't use, but we have a larger array of words we just prefer you not use on Free Talk Live because of risk assessment reasons. It's just like, look, we're on news talk stations. We're not on the morning Chucklehead show. And, those shows, they can use all the little code names to
Wait
get
a
away.
minute, we're not on the morning Chucklehead show.
That's very good. And then the rooster said, cock-a-doodle-doo. Right, that kind of nonsense, right?
Yeah.
And that's not what we do. So we limit sort of things that people can say, words that they can use. There's much better words to use, and that's a risk assessment.
You call this a liberty-minded show,
right.
And
exactly
you won't let me say the S word?
That's exactly right.
I am lost. I'm at a loss for words. The ethics that are just getting tossed out the window right now.
I actually think it ends up kind of being the best of both worlds, because those words do make it onto the podcast recording of the show. So podcast listeners can still hear them.
Sure.
And we haven't had
if
too
you're
many
listening to Free Talk Live to hear cuss words, you're listening to the wrong show.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. Although I honestly think that shows are better with uncensored language. Like, I actually enjoy podcasts where not where every other word is, some cuss word or whatever, but words where you can express yourself authentically, and even if that means using a swear word, like Brian's show, Sovereign
I was
Tech.
just going to say that. You can go to Sovereign Tech, SOVRYNTech.com, or SovereignTech.ninja. Ooh. And, and you can hear all the and it's totally uncensored.
Let's talk to Crichton. Crichton, thank you for your patience, first of all. And you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
How's it going, guys?
Doing great tonight. Yeah, good to hear from you.
I was going to comment about a previous caller's question about property rights in a libertarian environment, but I have to address the whole EasyDNS takedown thing.
Okay.
Yeah, tell us your thoughts.
Well, it's true enough that he has the right to do business with whoever he wants, but don't forget that he also made a promise, and if he actually ended up with a pharmacy that was selling tainted products, then he didn't do his due diligence. And by doing it the way he did, I think it's a breach of trust. I think he should have manned up and made this guy. He made the promise that he would not take down a website on his DNS without a court order unless it was in a violation of one of the pre-existing lists. Now, he could have put that on his pre-existing list and informed his client that they're going to have to go elsewhere immediately. But he should have still followed through and made them get a court order. Because if somebody really died and there was really evidence that it was because of this pharmacy, they could have got a court order in hours. A court order is not like a warrant. It's just a statement by a court.
Yeah.
It doesn't rise to that level. And he makes this claim on the website that unless you're doing these things, we won't take it down without a court order. But then he proves that it's not true. So it's a breach of trust.
Okay, so I agree that what I think he's doing, what I think Mark's doing is he's putting this out there to sort of get feedback. And I think that your feedback's valuable. One thing I would say is that I don't think somebody who's getting $10 a year from you has any due diligence when it comes to researching a customer. I mean, how deeply do I have to research a customer who spends $10 a year with me? I'd say that then gives me the ability to sort of slough them off if I don't need them.
Yeah, in my business,
but don't make that promise.
I hear you. I think that's I think it's a stinging critique, and it's something that he has to consider, but also consider when one takes a liberty stand in a business that one's treading new ground. One's trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
And how is a liberty business, how's a business with somebody who believes in the ideas of human liberty going to function? And yeah, a business is going to have to evolve. I don't know whether it evolved better or worse, and I think that that's probably one of the things that Mark wants to hear is sort of, how do we do here? What do you think we should be doing?
I'm sure it's a
story. I think there's a lot more to this story, and I believe that Mark, after taking this client on over a period of time, had come to believe that the pharmacy that he had taken on as a client was illegitimate. And that's why he was so willing to listen to a sweet-talking federal agent from another country and believe him. So if he didn't have personal reason to suspect this to be the case, would a liberty-leaning person do that?
Probably
I don't know anybody that would accept that on faith. So there's probably more to this story than meets the eye. But he should have been proactive. He should have made his rule changes on the website and then told his client he would have to take his business elsewhere as soon as the term was up. He shouldn't have just folded without the court order because it's so easy to get a court order. It's such a simple thing. It's not even a high bar.
Crichton, I appreciate what you're saying. I think, but you're also highlighting the fact that this is perhaps for Mark, I don't know, but this might be kind of new ground.
It sounds like it was.
I understand it's new ground. That's exactly my point. It is new ground. We're actually talking about what property rights would look like in a libertarian world. Because if we had a libertarian world, this could not have happened. Only his promise would have mattered. And in a libertarian world, this would have destroyed him.
Well, this pharmacy,
only his trust.
This pharmacy could always get 10 cents worth of name coin and register their whatever domain, deadlydrugs.bit, and then people could buy it through there, and there's nothing that's able to stop them.
And that's another thing. The government is a market. There's always demand for government, as Mark pointed out earlier in the show. People demand government, and the FDA is serving a function. They're serving a risk assessment function so that the general public doesn't have to do it. So they don't have to have a buyer beware for personal drugs. That's why that government has that demand. People expect that. But in a libertarian world, that would not be possible from government.
Well, it would be possible from government. You would have people who gave out certifications, and they would then govern what the people that got their certification would have. So,
it's interesting because I was immediately thinking of last week during the show. We did a live read for modup.net, which sells modafinil through their website. And they said, the library states that they are a sponsor of Reddit's third-party nootropics testing project. So I actually went to Reddit and I checked out their nootropics wiki, where they've compiled a huge amount of data about different nootropics, which are substances that are claimed to enhance your cognitive function, whether it's memory or alertness or whatever, being able to function on little sleep and so forth. And they actually have a number of warnings about different online pharmacies that say, look, don't buy from this website. This appears to be selling illegitimate drugs that are not what they claim to be. People have been hurt. And so there is sort of a...
ModUp's not one of those.
No. ModUp
Right.
was not one of those that was warned about, just to be clear. But Reddit does, keep data that's based on, a group of... It's basically peer-to-peer or crowdsourced data where people put out reviews of different websites. And I mean, that's already happening even in a world where we do have the FDA. So clearly there's still a demand for the knowledge about where are good sources of different drugs and substances and which ones are safe and which ones are going to hurt you. And yes. People still want to know that information, even in a world with an FDA, because the FDA is not completely solving that problem.
And the Consumer Reports has been doing this for decades. This exact kind of thing. Not for drugs, of course, but for
vitamins
products. And they're a private organization. Yet people don't go to their website. They go to the government. They expect protection. They assume that it's already there. If they find a product being sold in a legal institution, they expect that they're protected by the government and they're watching over them.
Yeah.
And
now, Mark has learned this, and he is going to a third-party site now that is not the FDA, but it's like Legit Meds or something like that, which is
Legit Scripts that verifies online pharmacies.
Right. So now he's learned, okay, if they're not here, I'm not putting them here. And
yeah, he's doing his own due diligence. But I mean, just going back to the idea that people expect the FDA to keep them safe, I agree with that, Crichton. But I think it's an erroneous assumption, because look at what happened with Vioxx. Look at the number of deaths that happen every year from pharmaceutical drugs that are approved by the FDA. Even though they've gone through rigorous testing and so forth, they can still be misused, or people just have bad reactions to them, and they do nothing to protect food. I mean, look at all the salmonella and spinach and peanut butter, and they're not keeping you safe.
Wait, well, hang on. Let me address that too. Mm-hmm. Because yes, the FDA makes mistakes. The FDA is made up of people. People make errors for either because they make an error or because they have a personal interest in doing so. But that's not the point. The same thing can happen to Consumer Reports, although there's no evidence that's actually happened. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could.
20 seconds, Crichton.
The point is that these institutions can't exist. He made a promise, and it's his promise that establishes his reputation.
Hey, Nathan, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind tonight?
Hi, everyone. Well, I wanted to say real quick about that web hosting or that DNS guy. I was kind of on his side until the very end, where that caller pointed out that he made a promise and then didn't keep his promise. So, I feel that the problem is ultimately you're going to have to choose between whether you want to stick to principle or you want to make money.
And stay in business.
Like
that's kind of the thing.
Seems
is
like
that
he made his choice.
Yeah, the caller Crichton, and I fully respect Crichton's intellect. But I mean, he was using the case in the libertarian world. I mean, we're not in that, and it's.
Well, he's right that the promise, your promise is your reputation. I think he's absolutely right in that. The difficulty is that, well, I mean, we're figuring this out as we go. And when you say that, well, I'm not going to pull somebody down, I think Crichton's solution
in a
sounds
libertarian
good,
world, would we actually have centralized domain registrars? I would
Probably
guess
not.
not. I think technology can solve that problem.
Yeah, Namecoin, NXT. I mean, there's things that can solve that.
Oh, yeah. Plus, the other thing is that the government, in a lot of ways, it's failed. And so in order to actually carry out its duty, it does things like freeze people's accounts, turn off their websites, turn off their water. It doesn't actually arrest them and bring them before a jury of their peers. So I think that's the other issue with that call.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.